The history of the Inupiat people of the North Slope is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation.
For thousands of years, the Inupiat have existed on the North Slope of Alaska. Archaeological evidence gathered at Point Hope and Barrow confirmed this.
In 1826, English explorer Captain Frederick William Beechey set out to plot Alaska's North Slope. Along the way, he and others gave various North Slope villages English names after their crew members. Each village had an Inupiat name, but the pronouncing of the names were difficult for Captain Beechey and his crew. For example, Point Hope was named after Sir William Johnstone Hope, the map maker for the expedition. The Inupiat name for Point Hope is Tikirak. Translated into English, it means point of land. During the commercial whaling era, Jabbertown, a whaling camp, was established near Tikirak. Once there was almost 5,000 people living in Tikirak, but warring and disease like the German measles and influenza wiped out most of the population. Point Hope is the second largest village on the North Slope and has been the most continuously occupied village for over 2,500 years. According to the 2000 census, Point Hope's population is over 750. Northeast of Point Hope lies the village of Point Lay. Point Lay is the last remaining village of the Inupiat people. Point Lay was named after George Tredescant Lay, a lieutenant on Captain Beechey's crew. The Inupiat name for Point Lay is Cully. Cully, translated into English, means to drag. Around 250 people reside at Point Lay. The beach formation near the village restricts the ability to hunt bowhead whales. Icy Cape, some 40 miles north of Point Lay, is better suited for hunting bowhead whales. Further north, along Alaska's western North Slope coastline, is the village of Wainwright. Captain Beechey named the village after Lieutenant John Wainwright. The Inupiat name for Wainwright is Ulronik, meaning fallen slope. Wainwright is the third largest village on the North Slope, with nearly 550 people. Today, perhaps the most recognized of all North Slope villages is Barrow, which was named after Sir John Barrow, another map maker who was a friend of Captain Beechey. Barrow's Inupiat name is Uppervik, which means place to hunt snowy owls. Home to over 4,500 people, Barrow is the hub of the North Slope and the business center of the region. In 1946, the United States Navy came to Barrow and began exploration on what was then called the Naval Petroleum Reserve No. 4. The Naval Arctic Research Laboratory, or NARL, was initially established to conduct seismological oil and gas work in the reserve. The lab also studied the animal and plant life of the region. Located in the Colville River Delta is Nuiqsut. Nuiqsut is surrounded by the Alpine oil field to the north, the Kukparuk oil field to the east, and the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska to the west. In the fall, crews from the village take part in the bowhead whale hunt. Today, Nuiqsut is home to nearly 450 people. Kaktovik means place for seining. It is located 90 miles west of the Canadian border on the northern edge of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Kaktovik was a trading place for whalers and the Inupiat during the commercial whaling era and became known as Barter Island. Today, this subsistence-based community of around 300 people continues the tradition of whaling and hunting. Lieutenant Patrick Henry Ray, who was on an expedition to conduct weather and magnetic observations along with 9 other men, arrived in Barrow in 1881. Early in the spring of 1882, he traveled with 2 Inupiat families to obtain fresh meat and crossed what he named the Meade River after Major General George G. Meade of the U.S. Army. In the 1950s and early 60s, coal was a source of heating and was hauled to Barrow by cat train. Along the Meade River sits the Inupiat village of Upicksoun. With a population of around 230, Upicksoun has the biggest town site on the north slope with over 27,000 acres. 250 miles northwest of Fairbanks and about the same distance southeast of Barrow sits the village of Ahmaogak Pass. This village of around 290 people is within the gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve. Sitting in the Brooks Range Mountains, Ahmaogak Pass is a beautiful illustration of the true majesty of Arctic slope lands. Whaling is a valued tradition among the North Slope Inupiat. It provides not only meat and muktuk for residents, but also provides opportunities to gather and celebrate a way of life that remains as strong today as it did centuries ago. Whaling, fishing, hunting seals, walrus, caribou, and birds, and gathering the food for survival is at the base of the Inupiat culture. The Inupiat are highly skilled in making tools with stone, ivory, bone, wood, sinew, and metal, tools that are often used in the pursuit of game for subsistence. Here, you see an Inupiat using a bow drill, which was used to make tools. These artifacts were found in Barrow in the early 1980s. The button is made from ivory, which came from the tusks of the walrus. The snow goggles are made from driftwood and served as modern-day sunglasses. Bola stones tied together with sinew were used as duck slings. There are different types of fishing hooks. One is made of wood with an ivory hook, and the other is made of ivory with a metal hook. Other artifacts that demonstrate the ingenuity of the Inupiat are a skin scraper that was used to tan dried animal skins and an ulu with a metal blade, indicative of post-contact. The Inupiat make their clothing from animal skins: caribou, wolverine, wolf, polar bear, and seal skins are made into clothing designed to protect them from the extremely frigid climate. The woman is wearing a caribou skin parka with a walrus tusk design and a wolverine fur ruff that serves as protection from the elements for the face. The man next to them is wearing an everyday snow shirt and a caribou parka with the fur inside. It is common for an Inupiat woman to carry an infant on her back in a parka designed to accommodate the baby. The homes of the Inupiat were as creatively made as their clothing. Made from the earth, their sod homes usually had whalebone and driftwood frames and a low tunnel entry for heat efficiency. Driftwood also served another purpose. Dog teams were in use as early as 1600 AD. The sleds were typically made from driftwood with whalebone runners. During the winter, dog sleds served as the main means of travel. During the summer, dogs were used to pack supplies. The umiak has been used by Inupiat whalers for centuries with very little change to their design. Made with wood frames, the umiak is covered with bearded sealskins that have been sewn together. Inupiat women have perfected the technique of waterproof skin sewing. The skins are stretched over the frame of the umiak and lashed on using rope. Most of the sealskin boats were rigged with sails to assist in towing a landed whale to shore. It is through the passing down of traditions from one generation to the next that keeps the Inupiat culture alive. The sharing of traditions often took place in community houses where stories were told. These stories often included knowledge of surroundings, in addition to the skills of survival that are key to living in the extreme conditions of Alaska's North Slope. They were lessons learned by watching, listening, and performing. There were no blueprints or written directions because there was no written language. Before then, stories and legends were told by word of mouth. In 1946, Reverend Roy Ahmaogak and Donald Webster began translating the New Testament from English into the Inupiat language, and so created the Inupiat orthography. Corrections to accommodate a change in the orthography and addition of chapter outlines took place in the 1990s with the help of Barrow elder Martha Aiken. Today, various aspects of the Inupiat culture and language have been documented and published in many books. These books are used in schools today. For centuries, the common belief was that the well-being of the Inupiat rested upon the spirits and the one person who could communicate with them, the shaman. Traditional religious practices, including shamanism, were frowned upon by missionaries when they arrived. Today, Christianity is the dominant religion of the Inupiat. Today, there are many different denominations across the state, with often more than one in each village. The first Presbyterian missionary to arrive in Barrow was Leander Stevenson in 1890. Stevenson was a teacher as well as keeper of the refuge station for shipwrecked whalers. At that same time, John B. Driggs had gone to Point Hope, serving as an Episcopal missionary, doctor, and teacher to the Inupiat people. Both missionaries were not particularly successful obtaining conversion, but did perform some heroic medical practices while in Barrow and Point Hope. The fourth missionary to arrive in Barrow was Dr. Henry W. Greist during the 1920s, and is credited with saving many lives. Greist captured many photos of Barrow in the 20s, leaving us with images of a time gone by. There would be many more missionaries making their way north to convert the Inupiat to a different religion. The main means of traveling north was via passenger ships and freighters like this one. When ships arrived in port, it was one time that locals had a chance to earn a little money unloading these ships. In the late 1920s and 30s, Arctic expeditions were becoming common. Explorers wanted to learn more about the North and the people who called it home. Ben Eielson piloted the first airplane to land in Barrow in 1926. In 1933, Charles Lindbergh and his wife made a stop at Barrow during his northern route on an expedition to Europe. The whole village was there to greet the pilot and his wife. In 1935, Cherokee Indian humorist Will Rogers and famous test pilot Wiley Post were exploring the northern reaches of America when they crashed at Olakpa, 12 miles southwest of Barrow. Today, a monument stands at the crash site and in front of the Barrow Airport, which is named after them. In the 1940s, Wien Airlines started making weekly trips to Barrow. This was the beginning of a new dependence on air travel. For the transporting of goods the Inupiat had become dependent on for their livelihood. During World War II, the Inupiat were involved in defending our nation. Many of them enlisted in the Alaska Territorial Guard. There was widespread church support for the Alaska Territorial Guard. Reverend Fred Clare Cooper of the Barrow Presbyterian Church recalled, "We were a strange-looking outfit at first. Tall men, short men, snow shirts of all colors and descriptions. The only distinguishing mark was the cobalt blue and gold stars insignia patch of the Alaska Territorial Guard, worn on the left shoulder. We were proud of those patches. But looks were not the whole story. There were not 110 men anywhere I would rather have anywhere in this area. This was home country to them, and rifles and knives were their stock in trade. On the target range, they were better than recruits anywhere." The late 1950s would be the beginning of a series of changes for the Inupiat. In 1959, Alaska gained statehood. For the indigenous people of Alaska, it became a time to fight for their lands, the same lands that were being granted to the new state of Alaska.
The history of the Inupiat people of the North Slope is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. The Alaska Statehood and the Impact of Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation.
It was March 30th, 1867, when the United States purchased Alaska from Russia. The two nations agreed that the United States would pay Russia $7.2 million. At less than 2 cents an acre, the United States acquired nearly 600,000 square miles. Throughout the time of Russian ownership, and for several decades after the purchase of Alaska by the United States, the Inupiat people were able to maintain their traditional subsistence lifestyle. "92 years would pass before the territory of Alaska would achieve statehood. Judge James Wickersham proposed the first statehood bill to Congress in 1916. The discovery of the Swanson River oil field in the 1950s finally gave the territory the tax base it needed to become a state. A constitutional convention was held to develop a state constitution, and a Statehood Act was passed in 1959. Unfortunately for the Native community, the Statehood Act did not effectively address or preserve Native lands or rights. The Inupiat Eskimos of Alaska's North Slope, realizing that the state of Alaska intended to claim and develop the oil-rich lands of the Arctic Slope, formed the Arctic Slope Native Association, ASNA, in 1965. ASNA's membership claimed Aboriginal title to 56.5 million acres of the petroleum-rich lands encompassing the entire North Slope of Alaska. The Alaska Federation of Natives, AFN, was formed in 1966 to pursue the land claims and the native rights settlement with the federal and state governments. Also in 1966, the claims filed by ASNA resulted in a land freeze issued by the Secretary of Interior, Stewart Udall. The land freeze prevented the transfer of further lands granted to the state of Alaska by the Statehood Act. Udall's land freeze brought an angry response from the state officials. In 1967, Alaska Governor Wally Hickel initiated a lawsuit to force the transfer of lands. Governor Hickel demanded the lifting of the land freeze because the freeze prevented the issuance of oil leases on federal lands, because the state was to receive 90% of royalty revenues from such lands. The state claimed it was losing significant revenues. On March 13, 1968, ARCO, an humble oil refining company, which would later become Exxon, announced the discovery of oil at Prudhoe Bay. The industry and the government began plans for an 800-mile Trans-Alaska pipeline. But native land claims cast a cloud over ownership of land and leases in Alaska. How would pipeline access be gained over land claimed by native groups? Compensation would have to be decided and a settlement had to be reached with the native people whose land and lives were about to be changed forever. For 4 long years, spirited debate would be focused on just how much land Alaska natives would retain and how much cash they would be granted for the extinguishment of their claims to the land. In 1969, the state of Alaska auctioned lease rights to Prudhoe Bay, generating $900 million. Inupiat and other Alaska natives, led by Charles Etuk Edwardson Jr., protested this sale by the state of what they considered to be Arctic Slope Inupiat resources. In 1970, AFN and ASNA increased lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. for congressional legislation to settle Alaska Native land claims. The huge oil discovery provided the first real incentive and opportunity to reach a federally legislated land claim settlement. The push to build a pipeline from the oil riches discovered at Prudhoe Bay across the state, including lands claimed by Alaska Native groups, would finally lead to a settlement. In 1971, ASNA filed the Edwardson v. Morton lawsuit claiming ownership of the entire North Slope of Alaska, including Prudhoe Bay. The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, ANCSA, is signed into law by President Nixon. The delegates from ASNA voted against supporting the act, and in the end were the only regional Native organization which openly opposed the act. Prior to the passage of ANCSA, the U.S. Congress wanted Alaska Native support and approval of the final act. The AFN gathered delegates from all regions of the state to vote. The ASNA delegates opposed the act because its land entitlement was inadequate and the monetary settlement was to be distributed on a per capita basis. ASNA would be authorized to select only about 5 million acres of land, and only after the federal and state governments made their land selections. In addition, ASNA argued that the money should be divided amongst the regions based on the value of land lost, rather than the population of the regions. The regions with large populations, mainly in the interior and the southeastern parts of Alaska, would receive the lion's share of the monetary benefits. The Alaska Native Claim Settlement Act was eventually approved by a majority vote of AFN delegates, with only the Arctic Slope delegates opposed. You may ask why Alaska Natives were organized under the corporate form. First, influential Alaska Native leaders and groups wanted to be independent in managing their land and affairs. They were dissatisfied with federal Indian programs. They thought something better than being in a trust relationship and being made wards of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, should be found. Second, the state and influential members of Congress wanted to prevent establishment of any additional reservations or Indian country in Alaska. Indian country has significant federal protection and almost complete exemption from state government authority. The corporate form would ensure that any new native entities in Alaska would be subject to state of Alaska jurisdiction. Several states, most notably Washington State, were in very difficult disputes with tribes regarding treaty fishing rights and exemption from state authority. Some state governments were pushing to terminate these rights. Scoop Jackson, the author of the Settlement Act and U.S. Senator from Washington State, would help to ensure the state of Alaska and its non-native residents would not face the same problems. In 1972, the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, ASRC, was formed with Wesley Aiken, Eddie Hopson, Warren Matumeak, Joseph Upicksoun, and Lester Suvlu, serving as original incorporators. In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a final decision in the Edwardson v. Morton case. The court ruled that although the Arctic Slope Inupiat did at one time have a rightful claim to the entire North Slope of Alaska, the passage of ANCSA in 1971 had extinguished all native claims to land in Alaska. Thus, ASRC would only be entitled to only the lands provided for in ANCSA. Of the 55 million acres of land originally claimed by the ASNA, ASRC received approximately 5 million acres of surface and subsurface estate. All of the proven oil-rich lands on the North Slope were off-limits to selection. These lands were either already taken by the state, which included Prudhoe Bay, or reserved by the federal government, which included the National Petroleum Reserve, 23 million acres, and the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, 9 million acres. ASRC's monetary settlement was only $22 million, paid over approximately 10 years. This was nothing even close to the value of the land rights lost pursuant to ANCSA and confirmed by the Edwardson v. Morton decision. The final version of ANCSA would provide for the payment of $962 million to the various regional native corporations formed pursuant to ANCSA. Out of this amount, $500 million would be generated by oil royalties from the North Slope lands claimed by the Inupiat people. ANCSA also contains language requiring regional corporations to distribute 70% of all natural resource revenues among the regional corporations. This provision is called 7I and has generated much litigation regarding exactly what must be distributed. A settlement has been reached among the regional corporations that lays out exactly what must be shared. ANCSA also provided for the formation of numerous village corporations within each region. Most regions, including the Arctic Slope, have separate and distinct village corporations for each village. These village corporations are managed independently and are completely separate entities. Eligibility and enrollment into the regional corporations pursuant to ANCSA was restricted to any Alaska natives of at least 1/4 native blood alive on December 18, 1971. ANCSA excluded anyone born after December 18, 1971, afterborns. However, in 1991, amendments to ANCSA authorized the creation of additional stock to include afterborns as Native corporation shareholders. Each of the regional corporations was given the option to issue additional shares of stock to those afterborns upon the approval of the majority of existing shareholders. Soon after the adoption of these amendments, the shareholders of ASRC overwhelmingly voted to issue additional shares for both afterborn natives and descendants. Because of this unselfish act, ASRC now has over 8,000 shareholders. The original enrollment in ASRC in 1971 was about 3,000. Over the last 30-plus years, our shareholder base has nearly tripled. Currently, there are a couple of different interpretations of what was settled by ANCSA. The interpretation of ANCSA by the Native community is that the act settled Native land claims in Alaska and land claims only. Other parties, including state officials and legislators, feel the act settled not only land claims, but extinguished all rights, including rights to self-government and any hunting and fishing rights that may have existed prior to the act. These are still topics of contention, but quite a bit has been decided by the court cases. The current status of ANCSA is that the land conveyances are pretty much complete. The monetary settlement has been paid. The U.S. Supreme Court has decided that no Indian country exists in Alaska as a result of ANCSA, except the Metlakatla Reserve. However, the Secretary of Interior has recognized over 200 tribes in Alaska. The subsistence rights of natives on federal lands are protected by the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, ANILCA.
The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act is sometimes referred to as a living document and is periodically revised to reflect the changing landscape in Alaska and the needs of the Alaska Native community. The Alaska Statehood and the Impact of Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. Inupiat Whaling and Subsistence, Sharing the Bounty, is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. Welcome to my home, the land of the Inupiat. Some call it a cold and desolate land, a harsh wasteland, windswept and frozen, a land to shun. But you will hear my people describe this land and the sea which joins it as our garden. Stories and the oral histories which our elders have handed down to us, we know that this Arctic garden has nourished us since the beginning of time. The land, the sea, and the animals which live here have strengthened and fed us both physically and spiritually. To those who know it, our land is abundant. However, it is true that it is a tough and demanding land. To survive and thrive in this environment, we Inupiat learned long ago how important it was to cooperate with each other, to work hard and to work together. We learned to share what we had in both times of plenty and times of scarcity. In this way, we ensured that our families and our communities survived. Inupiat culture is a hunting society. We cherish the animals we hunt. We honor them. We recognize the nourishment they provide for us, and we thank them for it. The animal most central to our culture and identity is the bowhead whale. To help you better understand what this mammal means to us, I'd like to share some whaling stories and scenes with you. These scenes beautifully highlight Alaska's North Slope whaling culture. We could begin this story any time of the year because there's always something going on in our community that relates to whaling. But we will start in July, since July is one of the best months for hunting uguruks or bearded seal. They are big, fat, and very tasty. Delicious in fact. They are also essential to the spring whale hunts in Barrow and Point Hope, because they provide the skins used to cover the umiaks, the boats traditionally used for spring whaling. Here you see a group of Barrow women gathered to sew the skins of 7 uguruks together to make one boat skin. After the skins are sewn, they are stretched across the wooden frame of the umiak. Once the skins are in place, the umiak is placed outside where the skins will cure in the crisp, dry air of February, March, and April. During this time, everywhere in the community, people are busy preparing for the hunt, whether they are making tools or buying supplies of gas for snow machines and boats. Captains' wives and other women in our families play an important role in the preparations. They not only sew the skins for the umiaks with waterproof stitches, but they are very busy sewing parkas and other items of warm clothing to keep the hunters warm. At ASRC, we are also busy identifying other employees who will take the place of those shareholders who will take subsistence leave. Subsistence leave is time off allowed by our company for the employees to leave work and participate in subsistence activities that will benefit their families and communities.
Good morning to all you whalers out there.
A whaling captain begins sharing with his community even before he and his crew leaves. Over the VHF radio, everyone is invited over for candy. Just before leaving, each whaling crew joins in prayer over the boat which will carry them to sea.
For your digging, and now the digging Jesus Christ. Amen.
For the past month or so, whalers have been scouring the ice and cutting trails through the pressure ridges, which form when huge masses of ice collide. Yet more trails must still be cut. It can be both frustrating and exciting seeing whales while you're still cutting ice. Yet the job must be done and cannot be rushed. When you reach the water's edge, it does not necessarily mean you can put down your pick. Here a crew finds that they must cut a launching area for the umiak. Here we see a crew member arming a harpoon. This is a delicate procedure. Next, the darting gun which works with the harpoon to land a whale must also be prepared for the hunt. Finally, the boats are made ready. The waiting begins. There is nothing to do but wait and watch, wait and watch, watch and wait. We know that sooner or later all this hard work, all of this sacrifice and effort is going to pay off. Somewhere out there, a whale will recognize that we have worked hard and sacrificed much. If this whale sees that the feelings we share in our crew are good, if it believes that we will take good care of the flesh it gives us, that we will store it in a clean ice cellar and share it freely with all the community, then it will come to us. It will give itself. It will feed our community. It will feed the Inupiat people just as its ancestors did. Here we see a small, tender whale, a favorite delicacy of the Inupiat people, giving itself to a fortunate crew from Barrow. The lucky crew will soon feel the joy and pride that comes with feeding the community. This situation is especially dangerous for the whalers because the ice they are on is extremely thin. The whale is unpredictable and could surface anywhere, at any time, including directly underneath the whalers.
Now, get down! Where is it? Oh, je gaat zelf dakpot?
Yeah.
Oh, je gaat zelf dakpot, huh?
Yeah.
There are a number of dangers that whalers face when they hunt the great mammal. Another danger whalers must always be on the lookout for is the polar bear, or nunnook. The nunnook knows no fear of anything, including man. There are days when we see the nunnook climb out of the water, look us over real good, and then come over to find out if we can make a meal out of us. We have always enjoyed bear flesh, and nothing is warmer than its fur. Yet no one in whaling camp wants to kill a nunnook at this time. We're hunting whales. Taking proper care of a bear kill can only distract us from the hunt. There are also slow times when the conditions are not right for whales, and we can relax. These are times to enjoy each other's company, to play pinochle and other card games. Of course, a young whaler's work is never done. When I was young, other boys and I had to work hard to earn our place in whaling camp. We had to chop fresh water ice and make coffee. We had to do dishes. We had to do whatever the men wanted us to do. It was hard, but it was part of becoming a whaler. We did not complain. It's just the same today. During the spring hunt, Ahmaogaks are superior boats because of their flexibility and light weight. They are better suited for dragging on sleds to the water's edge and for quick retreat if the ice conditions change. Here, whaling captain Jacob Adams describes the woods used to make his Ahmaogak frame.
We're making this Ahmaogak. We're using some light hardwood so we could keep the weight down. We use mahogany and poplar for the frames and some hardwood like oak for the ribs and the gunwale. That's to keep the boat as light as possible. That's how we want to see the boat made. So that's fairly light.
Where the whale birds are, the whale is not far away. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
During the fall hunts, the whalers must venture many miles offshore in open and sometimes rough seas. For these fall conditions, motorized aluminum or fiberglass boats are used. This fall whaling footage, filmed by a Barrow crew, takes you along on a successful hunt through the icy waters of the Arctic Ocean.
Come on, whale. He doesn't have a float.
For us, the kill is a sacred moment.
Right there, come on, man. Oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
It is truly a sacred and joyful time. It is also a time to show respect. After the whale has given itself to us, a prayer of thanks is given. Here, a Barrow crew successfully chases down and harpoons a bowhead during the spring hunt. The tail fins are removed from the whale so that when the hunters tow the whale back to shore, there will be less drag. A piece of muktuk is cut away from the whale. This will be boiled and fed to all who have come to help.
Do it down here. Yeah, right. Praise God.
The kill takes place out in the lead, or open water, far from the landing place. All boats gather together to help the successful captain, who flies his flag proudly to tow the whale.
Hey!
Again, this is a communal effort. Everyone who can joins together and pulls. It can take hours and hours to tow a whale back to the ice or to the shore. When you're sitting in a little boat, unprotected from the elements, the cold can sink into you like it does no place else. Yet no one complains, for we know there are good things ahead of us. We know we will be greeted with love and joy by those who wait for us.
Jump, you gotta go.
The feeling you have when you land the whale is almost indescribable. I will never forget the joy I felt when the crew that I was on landed a whale. I knew that the crew and I would soon be feeding the community. It was a good feeling. To us Inupiat, there is no greater honor than to have a whale give you the privilege of feeding the entire community. Experienced captains and crew members direct the important and dangerous job of pulling up a whale that may weigh up to 50 tons with block and tackle. Here, Captain Jake Adams passes on the knowledge of properly preparing the block and tackle to younger crew members. This too is the Inupiat way, sharing and passing on the knowledge and skills that have allowed us to survive for countless generations. In Barrow, Captain Henry Kicknick and his crew have landed a 56-foot bowhead whale. It is now that the hard work begins. It can take as long as 12 hours, and sometimes even longer, just to pull a large whale onto the ice. Holes are drilled in the ice, and a second block and tackle is added to help make the task easier.
Nice and loose, right? Yeah.
Not funny.
Yeah, you have to be snapped by
Paano speed mo?
Yeah.
Hey! Come on, guys!
Tradition dictates how and where each cut is made. Long-handled knives are used to cut the muktuk and meat.
Yeah, tingnan mo. That way.
Hooks with ropes attached to them are used to pull the muktuk as the muktuk is cut away from the body of the whale. The entire whale will be butchered and shared with the community based on traditions handed down through the centuries. Shares, some for the captain, the crews that helped tow the whale, the crews that helped land the whale, the people who came out to help with the butchering, and shares for the community at large, are spread about the ice. In this case, the meat in the muktuk is loaded onto sleds and hauled several miles back to Barrow. To you this may be a beautiful scene, but to the captain it's much more. He sees the wind has shifted to the west. He sees a drifting ice pack advancing towards him. He sees danger.
West wind, that's when the ice starts coming in. Right now we want to try and get east winds, or let the wind pick up stronger so it can blow away.
A large mass of ice could easily grind this site into rubble and cast anyone unfortunate enough to be on it into the sea.
Heavenly Father, we ask you right now to keep that ice.
Again, the people gather in prayer, asking for the winds to change and the harvest to be a successful one. When they are through butchering this bowhead, there will be nothing left. The Inupiat utilize everything they can from the bowhead, wasting very little. As they finish butchering the beach part of the whale, the ice comes in and begins to cover the rest of the whale. Back on shore, the meat and muktuk have been put in piles. The captain and his wife will designate shares for all who have come out to help with the whale. As people gather to help with the shares, the crew's flag is brought to shore.
Get some hooks right here and take them over there.
Shares of meat and muktuk are laid out on the ice, and all those who helped with the harvest of the bowhead choose a share by standing next to it. Although the day has been long and the work has been hard, these people will return tomorrow to help with the rest of the whale that is still in the sea. The day after a bowhead harvest, the captain flies his crew flag from his house. This is an invitation for all to come and eat. If any of you should ever be in one of these villages and you see a flag, come on in. Don't bother knocking. You'll be welcome. You'll not leave hungry. While the bowhead is the center of our culture, we depend on all the animals of our homeland. Belugas are particularly important to the people of Point Lay, where ice conditions make bowhead hunting difficult. Caribou, or tutu, is also a main part of our diet, especially to the Inupiat people of Ahmaogak Pass. I should note that besides being far better eating than beef, caribou hides make great bedding when you're at whaling camp. We fish many times of the year. Inupiat residents fish all up and down the Nigalit Channel and the Colville River. The Upicksoun people also depend upon the caribou and moose as a mainstay. Here we see a woman in Inupiat cleaning a moose. The nose of the moose has been removed and will be used in the soup, which is a delicacy amongst the Inupiats of Inupiat. We also hunt ducks and geese. After a long winter, the arrival of waterfowl in the spring signals warmer weather to come and provides the first fresh nourishment of the new season. In Wainwright, these young men are hunting the white-fronted goose from a blind they have constructed in the tundra. It takes patience and devotion to sit in a blind for hours on end. But we know that the birds we bring home will feed many. We do not just hunt for ourselves. We hunt for our families and our community.
I think I can open it here. If it's nailed in or not. Oh, no. Okay, and you can see right in there. There's a ladder and some, looks like they got some bags of muktuk, cork. I'm sure there's everything down there. Tutu.
Long before anyone brought a refrigerator to the Arctic, we had our ice cellars. Even during the hottest summer days, our food is kept cold, without the help of electricity. The ice cellar is also the place we go when it's time to get ready for the feast. The Inupiat culture is one of celebrating. We have many feasts for several different occasions. One feast that happens after a successful spring whaling season is the Apuadi. At the end of the spring hunt, they push the umiak on a sled and from the ice and water onto the shore. Much of the community is there to greet them and celebrate their joy. This Apuadi is being held in honor of Harry Brower Jr. and the Little Kupok crew.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Brower. I'd like to welcome you to Barrow. Here's the first Apuadi, and this is what you call mikiak. It's muktuk and meat cut up and rendered. So, and it's very delicious. Delicious. Very delicious. So I'm serving my second round here. Oh. Second round. Yeah. Hello.
Mikiak is whale meat and muktuk that has been soaked in the blood of the whale and stirred 2 or 3 times a day for a week or more. It is a delicacy amongst my people and myself.
A little bit more.
We call it fermented whale. Upicksoun.
Where do I put this?
Hi, Harmony.
Where do I put this?
Just set it down.
I was going to put a picture of her, all right.
The skin of the successful cruise Upicksoun will be removed from the boat and used for the blanket toss at the community's first big whale feast, Nalugutuk, which is held in June.
How's that? Yeah.
Here we see muktuk being cut for this Inupiat summer celebration. When the day comes, the host crew brings the food they have prepared to the feast site. Here, successful barrel crews join together under their flags as a blessing is offered. The food is served, first soup, which can be caribou, geese, or duck, followed by generous portions of mikiak, muktuk, meat, and other portions of the whale. All who come are given generous portions to take home and store for future consumption. Similar distributions are given out during feasts held on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. One of the biggest challenges during the feast day is how to eat all that food and still be ready for Nalugutuk. Here you are tossed on a skin blanket after the feast. The feast lasts all day long and ends with a round of traditional Inupiat dancing, which can go well past midnight. But next month is July again, and it will be time once again to hunt for Uguruk. The annual cycle of preparing for the hunt begins anew. Inupiat Whaling and Subsistence, Sharing the Bounty, was brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. Inupiat values and values applied in the business environment is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation.
Love and respect for our elders and one another. Our elders model our traditions and ways of being. They are a light of hope to younger generations. May we treat each other as our elders have taught us. Respect for nature. Our Creator gave us the gift of our surroundings. Those before us placed ultimate importance on respecting this magnificent gift for their future generations. Compassion. compassion. Though the environment is harsh and cold, our ancestors learned to live with warmth, kindness, caring, and compassion. Humility. Our hearts command we act on goodness. Expect no reward in return. This is part of our cultural fiber. Humor. Indeed, laughter is the best medicine. Cooperation. Together, we have an awesome power to accomplish anything. Cooperation, what does it mean in Inupiat society? All of these many hundreds and thousands of years, cooperation has been a value that we as Inupiat people have used to enable us to survive. Cooperating with one another in our hunting, in our everyday lives, has given us the skills and tools that we need in order to come this far. We use the value of cooperation in our everyday lives, and in whaling, when a whale is caught, everybody cooperates to bring the whale to shore. Everybody cooperates with one another to pull it up on the ice. Everybody cooperates with one another to help get it cut up and then distributed to the whole community. Even as an example, the value of cooperation as taken from Inupiat worldview is being exercised in the conduct of everyday business. The village corporations have taken the value of cooperation and applied it to the conduct of their everyday business affairs, and have found that it is value that in use strengthens their business endeavors. Cooperation, we need to pass it on to our children. It's a birthright that I think that we have, that we need to pass on to our children. We were given that birthright from our ancestors and from our grandparents, and it's only right that we use it in our everyday lives and find ways to pass that on to our future generations. Sharing. It is amazing how sharing works. Your acts of giving always come back.
My name is James Patkodak, and I will translate into English what Isaac Akuchik says when he talks about sharing. Mr. Akuchik says, we have words to give to you on what we have learned from our ancestors, uncles, and parents. He says that God gave His only Son to all people so that we can have everlasting life while on this earth. That is where sharing comes into play from the beginning. Now today, people are working on this important value, speaking about how we live and how we do our jobs, or share food with people that are in need. People that like to share what they have seem to have more than others who don't. We know that sharing is very good to have in our lives. We have heard and probably experienced ourselves that being unable to share with other people brings poverty to oneself. Mr. Akuchuk stresses to you, do not let that happen, because as Inupiat, we must share in our lives, whether it be jobs or leadership in our villages. That is what we're talking about in the value of sharing.
Family and kinship. As Inupiat people, we believe in knowing who we are and how we are related to one another. Our families bind us together. Knowledge of language. With our language, we have an identity. It helps us to find out who we are in our mind and in our heart.
Heavenly Father, we ask you right now to keep that ice, even though it looks
Spirituality. We know the power of prayer. We are a spiritual people. Avoidance of conflict. The Inupiat way is to think positive, act positive, speak positive, and live positive.
I'm going to talk about the avoidance of conflicts as I was taught by my parents. When there is a conflict, one does not really avoid it. We resolve it with the help of elders to reach a decision. We do not keep arguing and arguing about something. It has to be solved. Once it is solved, it is over. We do not hold a grudge against someone for a long period of time. We begin to lead our lives with renewed spirit and start over again. The decision is usually made for the good of community. One does not make a decision just for himself or herself, but for the good of community. We need to live together and cooperate in order to survive.
It's a little-known fact that Inupiat people have been involved in the oil industry for over 150 years. In the 1850s, the Inupiats worked for and guided the New England commercial whaling crews, who pursued the bowhead whale for its extremely valuable oil and whalebone. History indicates that the oil and baleen from one large bowhead whale could generate $25,000, which was a great deal of money in those days. Today, the Inupiat people continue to work with and assist in the new and modern commercial oil industry in the pursuit of additional oil and gas resources. By assisting with the development of these resources, the modern oil industry provides the Inupiat people the opportunity to share the bounty of the North Slope. The values of cooperation and teamwork have allowed the Inupiat people to work well the New England whalers and the modern oil industry. We continue this partnership, which enables us to share the bounty and provide economic benefits to our shareholders. Sharing the bounty through employment. The best way we know of to provide economic benefits to our shareholders is by sharing the wealth generated by our business activities. We strive to provide opportunities for satisfying and meaningful careers that support shareholder families. This is one of the core values of AES, and it relates directly to the values important to the Inupiat people. Sharing the bounty through dividends. For those shareholders and families unable to work, cash dividends provide some financial relief. This is why earnings are so very important to our business. They provide the funds with which to pay dividends. To further our core value of developing and employing our people, we utilize the following programs: shareholder hire preference policy, shareholder hire goals, culturally sensitive company policies, compliance and tracking and reporting, recruiting, career development, shareholder training. The shareholder hire goals for AES are set by ASRC Board of Directors. Employment practices. ASRC Energy Services practice for recruiting and employing qualified candidates for employment is listed below in descending order or priority. Number 1, hire ASRC shareholders. Number 2, promote candidates from within the corporation. Number 3, hire non-shareholder spouses of shareholders except when prohibited by law. Number 4, hire other Alaska Natives. Number 5, hire Alaska State residents. Number 6, hire other non-Alaska Natives. Number 7, consider all other applicants. Compliance with this hiring priority is ensured by our electronic job vacancy announcement and hiring program. An exception to this order of priority must be pre-approved at the business unit manager level, and the program requires this exception be obtained before a hire is made. Further, the implementation of the online GAVA process has provided yet another alternative to shareholders seeking employment with our company. Shareholders throughout the world can apply for AES positions with the click of a mouse. Equally important, the online JVA process has improved our ability to track and report shareholder hire statistics for ASRC. The hiring and retention of our shareholders is very important to AES. Together, our policies and the JVA program have improved our ability to ensure compliance with ASRC shareholder hire preference policy. The AES recruiting staff also helps to ensure compliance with our hiring priority and use of the JVA program. ASRC Energy Services has recruiters in Anchorage, Barrow, and Fairbanks. We also have a career development program which includes job shadowing program. The Job Shadow program gives an employee the opportunity to work side by side with a more senior professional to learn the tricks of the trade. The AES intern program was restructured and designed for college students who are employed during the summer and given the opportunity to gain work experience in their field of study and ultimately long-term employment with AES and other ASRC companies. Our work-study program has 2 facets. First, it's geared towards high school students needing applicable credit to graduate, and second, college students in need of part-time employment to supplement their financial needs. The individual career development plans are developed for existing employees who have the desire to develop themselves in their current positions. Industry-specific training. To help facilitate the transition into the workplace, AES has developed work habits and code of conduct training. Corporation versus shareholder training. A corporate shareholder's rights and responsibilities relative to the corporation. Culture orientations. To establish a greater understanding and appreciation for the Inupiat culture. Job site condition orientations. What to expect on different work site locations. Supplemental safety training program. To ensure new recruits are very well aware of the industry's extreme focus on and strong commitment to the safety in the workplace. The charts shown are samples of shareholder hire reports that are provided to ASRC Board of Directors. AES corporate culture. Improved relations with shareholders. Steady increase in shareholder employed. Increased manager commitment to shareholder employment and development programs. Increased awareness and sensitivity to Inupiat culture. Village visits by managers. See village lifestyle firsthand. Gain an appreciation for limitations of village life. Recognize the importance of subsistence. Central to the Inupiat culture. Tied to seasonal activities and preparations. Subsistence leave provided up to 10 days per year additional unpaid leave time. The Concerns Resolution Program is designed to provide for a quick, fair, accessible, and inexpensive resolution of concerns between the company and the company's employees. Staffing the department with shareholders has made the concerns process very shareholder-friendly. The CRP staff can relate to and understand shareholder issues and problems. The Concerns Resolution Program gives the shareholder a place and staff they are comfortable working with. The Concerns Resolution Program has become a real benefit and resource for our ASRC shareholder employees, in addition to being a reliable and fair resource for our manager and non-shareholder employees as well. Benefits of CRP for shareholders. Shareholder liaison. ASRC family of companies, oil industry, union and non-union affiliation, native corporation, shared resources, shareholder advisor, employment, resume writing, interview skills, job searching, work ethics and company policies, career coaching and resources, employee assistance program, cooperation and sharing. I want to share one of my favorite analogies that I use at our work site here in Anchorage, Alaska. The whale, it's shared with all the people on the North Slope and at native gatherings. Now the captain and the president and CEO provide clear direction and vision for the crew. For the captain, his vision is the whale. For the president and CEO, his vision are contracts. The co-captains carry out direction and ensure the crew has the needed equipment to do the work. The executive team carries out direction and vision and ensures their crew has the needed equipment and knowledge. The oarsman maneuvers the boat to meet the crew's objective of landing the whale. Business unit managers direct employees to complete assigned tasks in a safe and efficient manner. The crew and employees work diligently to carry out the captain and the president's vision. They strive to do a good job. There are a lot of different people involved at all levels of an organization to carry out the president's vision for the company. The whaling crew extend beyond those in the whaling boat to those within the community, such as individuals who prepare the trail on the ice, the cooks, the boat skin sewers. We all share in the fruits of our labor. It's a win-win working relationship. Inupiat values and values applied in the business environment was brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. ASRC, a global enterprise founded and managed by the Inupiat people, is brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation.
The mission of the Inupiat-owned Arctic Slope Regional Corporation is to actively manage our lands, resources, diversified operating subsidiaries, and investments throughout the world in order to enhance Inupiat culture and economic freedoms. There is more to ASRC than business and the bottom line. It's about preserving our way of life. I'd like to tell you how we succeed in business while staying true to our culture. ASRC was established by Congress in 1971 under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. Through ANCSA, the Inupiat and ASRC became more active in Western culture and business. With minimal business experience and a desire to learn, the Inupiat began to manage the 5 million acres of land and small cash entitlement received under ANCSA. ASRC was formed to manage these assets, to provide for the future of our people, and to oversee the critical management of the land. ASRC has since expanded into a wide variety of business enterprises. Our diverse subsidiaries are involved in oilfield services, pipeline construction, engineering and technical services, civil construction, government services, capital financing, petroleum refining and distribution, tourism, and communications. Our growth has been steady and strong, and we have our employees to thank for this success. We recognize our employees as our most important resource and value their dedication, professionalism, and teamwork. Today, ASRC employs more than 6,000 workers and is a significant player in Alaska's economy. Since 1995, Alaska Business Monthly magazine has ranked ASRC #1 among Alaskan-owned companies. ASRC conducts business through several first-tier subsidiaries. Some of our older companies, such as Eskimos Incorporated, Tundra Tours and the Top of the World Hotel are based in Barrow. Other subsidiaries with a strong presence in Alaska include SKW Eskimos Incorporated, which performs industrial and commercial construction throughout the state. On various projects in rural Alaska, SKW Eskimos Inc. partners with village corporations to get the job done. Another notable and long-standing subsidiary, whose work is highly regarded within its industry and by the communities where they conduct business, is ASCG Incorporated. This company offers architectural, engineering, surveying, and technical services. ASRC Energy Services, the largest revenue-generating subsidiary of the corporation, provides oilfield services through 3 core business units that include pipeline power and communications, engineering and technology, and operations and maintenance. Another widely respected subsidiary of ASRC that has firmly established roots in the state is Petrostar Incorporated. This petroleum refining, marketing, and distribution company has a visible and recognizable presence in the interior and south-central regions of the state. With a growing interest in providing services to the U.S. government, ASRC has acquired and established subsidiaries guided under the U.S. Small Business Administration 8A program. The U.S. SBA 8A program assists minority-owned businesses with federal contract opportunities. The newly formed ASRC Federal Holding Company manages a group of subsidiaries certified under the U.S. SBA 8A program. These subsidiaries provide engineering, technical, and management solutions to federal agencies such as NASA, the Department of Energy and Defense, and the National Imagery Mapping Agency. Another 8A subsidiary of the corporation that has major business outside of Alaska is ASRC Constructors Incorporated, which was awarded federal contract work that involves a share of the responsibility of managing and operating the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in Louisiana. How did a company that didn't exist in 1970 become the corporation we know today? Well, with a lot of hard work and stable leadership. We believe that keeping true to our cultural values in business also has played an important role. Our Inupiat values have helped our people survive in the harsh environment of the Arctic and helped ASRC survive in the cold world of business. We show respect for subsistence traditions. Our corporate personnel policy allows employees time off work to hunt, fish, and gather subsistence food. Profits are important, but our people must satisfy their cultural needs as well. We care for our youth.
Hi!
The Arctic Education Foundation offers scholarships for college and vocational training to help shareholders achieve satisfying and productive careers. We share the fruits of our labor. Just as we share the bounty of a successful hunt with others, all ASRC shareholders benefit from their corporation's success. Twice each year, ASRC issues dividends from company profits and interest earned on our investments. We care for our land. We have survived in the Arctic for thousands of years. We know the land is the foundation of our lives and culture. ASRC embraces Inupiat and Western cultural values. In many ways, we merge them to further our mission of enhancing cultural and economic freedom. For example, because we respect our elders, ASRC established an Elders Benefit Trust, which issues small monthly payments to shareholders over the age of 65. This monthly payment to qualifying ASRC shareholder seniors supplements their annual income and helps them pay their monthly bills.
Good morning, ASRC.
By relying on our culture and experience, ASRC has proved itself a successful and prosperous member of Alaska's business community. But like any business, if we are to remain strong and grow, we must look to broader horizons. We are doing just that. ASRC puts a lot of effort into recruiting, hiring, and retaining shareholders as employees of ASRC and its subsidiaries. We also established a career development program to equip the next generation of Inupiat leaders to guide their corporation into a brighter future. Early on, Inupiat leaders with vision understood that North Slope oil development could benefit all Alaskans, and we continue to advocate expansion of this industry. We have made strong progress in our efforts to encourage oil and gas exploration on our lands. The Alpine Field near Nuiqsut is on lands owned in part by ASRC. ConocoPhillips and its partners started producing oil at Alpine at the year end of 2000. Alpine is expected to yield up to 365 million barrels of high-grade crude oil. Production at Alpine has been our first experience as a royalty owner in a commercial field. Development of Alpine provided business opportunities for some of our subsidiaries and created hundreds of jobs for Alaskans. On other fronts, ASRC continues to lobby Congress to open the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for oil and gas development. We see this as a long-term prospect. ASRC and the Village Corporation for Koktovik own 92,000 acres inside Anwar. We have long supported exploration and development that will bring jobs and freedom to our people without threatening our subsistence lifestyles. Another long-term prospect is the Western Arctic Coal Project. Our region contains up to 1/10 of the world's coal supply. ASRC and other native regional corporations have become leaders in the effort to expand resource development. We are investing in and creating new kinds of business and bringing new revenues and new jobs to Alaska. In conclusion, the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation is a progressive and profitable corporation which operates in accordance with the ancient and abiding values of our Inupiat shareholders. Quayanakpak, thank you very much.
ASRC, a global enterprise founded and managed by the Inupiat people, was brought to you by the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation.